These last 2 years have been a wild ride. We've seen a global pandemic, we've saw almost 50 million people lose their jobs, and then all of them be hired back within the last year. We are currently, today, November 2022, back to the same employment numbers we were pre-pandemic. So what's in store for 2023? Now let me first asterisk this. Just like any prediction, nobody can fully see the future. Nobody saw a pandemic coming, but I can tell you there are 8 things that are gonna be on the top of people's minds moving into 2023 in how we recruit and find great people for our organization. So the first one I want to cover is return to work, RTW. This is probably one of the most controversial things. Now, I will tell you, for an employee, it's really simple. I was looking at a massive study, thousands and thousands of people. 80% of them do not want to return to work fully. So as employers, we've got to come to terms with this. You can make them come back to work, but that's going to be a huge disadvantage in your ability to attract and retain the very best people. This is going to be something that you're going to have to deal with and come up with alternatives. Now, the lucky part of that stat, the 80%, the deceiving part, is about half of those are interested in sort of a flex schedule. The beauty of this last couple of years is we're getting sick and tired of our families at home. So no, I mean, look, we all love our families, but anytime you spend too much time with people in very close quarters, it is nice to get a little bit of a break and have a bit of variety in your adult interactions, right? So there are people that they're looking for more flexibility to be moms and dads and to go to the soccer games and to work from home on Fridays or come in late, leave early, to work later in the night to finish up their projects, whatever it is. They're just looking for more flexibility. That's really what that data is telling us. And so the more we can accommodate that, which has been done and proven to be happen, and using smart management structures, you can really accomplish this in a meaningful way. So I would think about that. Can you provide a more flexible return to work strategy? Can you offer more of a flex or work from home type of environment? Those are going to give you huge advantages in your ability to recruit and retain the very best people. The second item is Gen Z. They're coming in full force. So I like to think about this. I'm kind of they call me a Zennial, right? I'm somewhere between a Gen X and a millennial. And I really thought about this a lot because 10 years ago there was all this talk about the millennials coming into the workforce and what we wanted. And I just feel like each generation, we're just sort of an iteration of the next, right? Our parents, the boomers, mine, I mean, they worked hard. They were trying to really level up and to become successful and live that American dream. And many of them did. But what I observed, at least with my folks, is they got to a certain age and they realized there was more to life. These were the parents that picked me up at 6 p.m. from my after school program, and they worked all the time, and I always wondered where they're at, and I never didn't get enough attention, right? So poor me. But as they got older, I saw something in them. They really appreciated being able to enjoy the experiences of life and not work as much. So they started to recover from their workaholism. Boomers were workaholics, frankly. That sort of rubbed off on the Gen Xers and a little bit of the millennials, but it rubbed off in different ways, right? I always call myself a recovering workaholic. I started my working career working 60 plus hours a week, grinding, working as hard as I possibly could. And I loved work, but very quickly I got burnt out on that. Other millennials, I think, had different perspectives. They saw other people doing that stuff and they just realized that wasn't for them. They wanted a bigger and better balance and they wanted experiences. So things became less important to this next generation. And the experiences, traveling and fun stuff, great food, restaurants, just spending their money and their time on experiences with friends and family, doing fun, interesting things, exploring the world was more important to them than working 60 hours a week. Gen Z still has that flavor going on. They still appreciate the experiences, but they've also come around a bit and they realize that they're looking for something they can be passion filled about in their work. So when Gen Z is coming into the workforce, they're looking at what does this organization do for the world? What is their mission, their purpose, and how does that line up with their own personal missions and purpose? Gen Z is much, much more aware of kind of social and cultural and global needs, and they're looking to be able to make a difference in the world and the people around them. And they all have their own different initiatives. The third item is push back with recruitment automation. So recruitment automation can offer some great benefits, and it can also hinder your ability to engage people. One automation that works really well, in my opinion, is self-scheduling. And I know this for a fact. 95% of the people I meet with, whether they're candidates or clients, they all use a self-scheduling tool to schedule me. It makes their life easier. There's no more back and forth emails, text messages, misconnections, miscommunications, right? But one that maybe is impersonal are like one-way video interviews. I'm a bit of a fan of one-way video interviews, but it's impersonal, right? There's nobody else there. There's nobody on the other side of the table talking to the person. So we just want to be careful. You start bringing in these AI chatbots and impersonal messages. So we just want to be careful how we use our technology moving forward in 2023 and in the future. We want to make sure that when we're using automation, that we're making it really personal, and we're still striving to make a personal connection with the individual on the other side of that. And that can be done just through simple messaging and how you communicate, and personalization tools that you can use within your AI and your other types of tools. The fourth one is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This topic's not going anywhere. Prior to the pandemic, I used to speak to SHRM conferences all the time about this stuff. So the income gap, the pay gap between middle-aged white men like myself and people of different colors and men and women for that matter, so it doesn't matter, there's a huge gap, and it's anywhere between like 15% and 25%. So there is a huge difference in income paid to people based on the color of their skin and their gender. And that's just a fact. We are beginning to see the effects of huge income differentials. Now, it's being addressed through laws, pay transparency rules, and we're seeing rules like not asking about past income, about big job boards like Indeed making it a requirement to put pay ranges in those job ads, in big cities like New York City, who actually mandate it, as well as the state of Colorado, and more are following. All of these things are going to begin to help chip away at it, but that's not the point. Following government rules is not the reason why we should be trying to tackle these diversity, equity, inclusion reasons. Number 5 is recruitment as a revenue generating activity. Recruiting's always been a revenue generating activity. When you have open positions, you're not producing your goods and services. You're unable to capture potential revenue for your organization. But through the pandemic, through this turbulent time that we've seen, organizations have seen that come to life, right? When they had to rehire all these people to get them back into jobs, you're seeing restaurants who are closing early for a whole day or days at a time because they just can't staff. They're losing revenue. So that the idea that recruiting and hiring is a revenue generating activity has had a microscope on it over the last year or so. And I think the executive teams, hiring managers, HR professionals are going to start to think about and start talking about recruiting as a revenue generating activity, tying recruiting outcomes to revenue and profitability outcomes on the back end, and start looking at it from a more strategic perspective. So that's number 6, is using data in the recruiting and hiring process. So an increased awareness of the metrics, the leading indicators. Again, that feeds back into whether we're going to get the business outcomes we need on the other end. So that's the time to fill, quality of hire, the quality of candidate, a whole host of different types of metrics. Evaluating the sources of talent. So, something I talk a lot about is referrals being one of the most profitable, the cheapest, fastest, best ways to find people, is really honing in on things like that and doubling down on your employee referral programs could be an example of how organizations are beginning to use data to make better decisions on where they spend their time in their hiring and recruiting practices. Also, using AI and assessment type tools to make more definitive hiring decisions backed by data, right? If we're able to evaluate candidates to make sure that they're finding the right fit for themselves, we're able to do two different things. One, we're able to predict our future outcomes. Who's more likely statistically to be a high performer, to be more retainable, to last longer, to just be a better culture fit for our organization. But we're also able to be more objective in that hiring process to ultimately be more inclusive in our hiring process. So when we use data the correct way, when we use it not with a bias slant, but using it to be more inclusive, you might actually find that you're able to identify talent that you never would have looked at. So these are those people of different colors and backgrounds and genders that you might have had an unconscious bias against, but the data is telling you something different. And this is going to be a really important piece of that, diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's going to be a very important piece of making strong decisions on when and how we're going to invest in our recruiting programs. Okay, number 7 is the importance of an employer value proposition. Again, we've been through a period of time over the last year or so where finding and attracting talent has been nearly impossible. People are posting ads and they're getting absolutely no response. So the hyper focus on delivering a value proposition to your potential employees and to your existing workforce is increasing. Wages are already going up, but those increased benefits and flexibility and making sure that there's pay equity, all of these things are all important part of your value proposition. Gen Z's looking for purpose-driven organizations, again, an employer value proposition. So the better your organization gets at sharing their value proposition with their prospective employees and their existing team members, the more successful they're going to be. And we're already seeing a huge focus on people revamping their employer value propositions and taking it a lot more seriously. And that's going to continue in 2023. All right, number 8. And this is probably one of the most controversial parts here, but we're going to see a huge influx of construction, e-commerce, tech. So as of making this video, Twitter laid off half their workforce. Facebook laid off 13%. We're seeing tech, e-commerce, retail, construction, all of these industries begin to retract due to the rising interest rates. This is a great opportunity to bring on and attract really high quality talent. So one of the hidden things in those numbers is, especially in the tech and the e-commerce side of things, is they way overstaffed. These companies they actually had more people on their payroll post-COVID or throughout COVID than they did prior to COVID. So this is a little bit of a sneaky correction. You see all the news about these big layoffs. Well, these people actually were sucking up all the talent and creating a bit of a vacuum for all the other industries that maybe had a slower trajectory to rebound from their COVID days. So take advantage of the talent that these folks have cultivated, they've enhanced, they've given these people skills and experiences, and look at the people for the skills and experiences they bring, not about the direct experience that relates to your world, but the other soft skills, cultural skills, and other skills that they've developed within those organizations. And look for the hidden gems that are coming out of those industries, because they're going to be flooding the market, and they already are. So take advantage of that. Watch our next video here on the labor market here ending 2022 and 2023. I'm going to get into some of the more technical economic drivers that are going to be causing these 8 things to be major factors here. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.